All right, so it looks like we're live. Let's see. Let me just make sure. I got to look at my box there. Excuse me. Choking a little bit. But probably going to hear a little bit of barking here in the background. As you can probably hear right now. Wife's just getting home. So give it a few minutes. We'll see if anybody joins, and then we'll go from there. So let's see what everybody's got. Hopefully it's coming through pretty good. I don't know. It looks pretty nice on my screen. Apparently my chat is gone for some reason. So let's get rid of this. So we'll see. Dun, dun. Let's see. What is that? Why, hello, Dennis. How are you, sir? You don't mind just letting me know how things look and sound. Hopefully I have made the correct adjustments. Looks like my video quality sucks balls, but you know, hopefully that will change. You're saying it looks fine, then I believe what you say, sir. Dennis, do you know if this came up on the notifications? Like I said, I'm playing around with this Prism Live Studio, and I just want to know if everything's coming out good and if everybody got a notification a couple hours ago. So I just want to know. Just want to know. All right, very good. Thank you, Rich. Thank you. I could be a little brighter. Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm still working on the lights. My lighting is not 100% what it used to be. So, a lot of people use those soft boxes. I don't really have that. So I just have two little lights here to my right. And, sometimes it works better than others. And, that's how it is. I mean, I have another light. I can put this here. I don't know if that works. Let's see if that works. Not like anybody wants to, does anybody really want to see my face? Probably not. Probably not. Huh. So no notifications. So maybe I would say unclick the bell and then click the bell again. Let's see. Let me get rid of this. So we'll let people come on in and then we'll get started. I think it's going to be an interesting chat tonight. Obviously, I'd like for everybody to chime in at some points and during the chat. Based on the title, obviously, we're going to talk a little bit more about whether or not the things you see on YouTube are actually real, fake, make-believe, or, are people going to be, buying these products based on what our gun tubing and also just plain old YouTubing influences say. So like I said, we'll let people kind of scroll in, and if you guys are getting in, just say hello. And I'll say hello back. Keep in mind, if you have any questions, just ask. You don't have to donate in the super chat. I will do my best to answer any and all questions that I can, and we'll go from there. So right now there's 9 people watching, so I appreciate you guys joining me. This will probably be about an hour, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more. It just depends on the topics and any questions that you guys might have. Also, I'll apologize ahead of time. I'll be looking down a little bit because I do have some notes with me because I knew if I didn't have something to kind of guide this, I'm going to be all over the place. So, just keep that in mind that I'm not ignoring you. I'm just looking at my notes. Hello, Harry Tuttle. How are you, sir? I think that says Tuttle. Turtle, maybe? Turtle. So let me get rid of this box here. What is this? Let me get rid of this. There we go. That's much better. All right, so I will give it about another minute and then we'll get started. So please bear with me, guys. I just want to see if we can get some more people in here in the room. I may sneeze every once in a while, but that's my bad. What's up, Armsman? How are you? Yeah, YouTube is the most truthful source of information. So they say, or so they want you to believe. But I think from the time I started on YouTube, which is going back several years, to now, I would say YouTube has become more and more of like a, almost like a free advertising website. I don't even think it's educational. I don't even think it, some things are cool. Like I listen to a couple of podcasts. Obviously, Joe Rogan's podcast is always good. I enjoy that. But at the same time, there really isn't much that's out there that for me is enjoyable. So it's, unfortunate, but that's the reality. All righty. So here we go. All right, guys. So a couple of things. One of the things I want to say was that, what we're going to talk about is going to ruffle some feathers potentially. And it really isn't meant to do that. So I just want to throw the disclaimer out there right now that if you are watching this live, or if you happen to have nothing to do and you watch it later on, one of the things I'm going to say is, like, whatever I say tonight, there is no right or wrong to this, right? There are going to be conversations here, dialogue. And to me, that's the important part of this, is the fact that I just want to have a conversation about, what my opinions are on YouTube. And then obviously you guys can chime in as well. But I think most importantly, the idea is that this isn't to knock anybody. This is to basically just bring up some points. If people get butt hurt over it, well, then that's on them. I'm not going to, take part in bashing any particular channels or people. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with people on YouTube trying to make money. I don't see anything wrong with it. I just think that, sometimes there is a line that you shouldn't cross, that gets crossed, that most people don't want to talk about. And so my job is really to talk about, how are YouTubers raising money? And again, keep in mind, this was a gun channel at one point. Not really sure what it is now, but at the same time, I want to try to talk about how YouTubers make their money. And there's kind of three different ways, right? And there's probably more. But the first one is going to be through sponsorships. And sponsorships is, in my opinion, probably the most dicey of the three, because when you have somebody who gets sponsored by a company to do a job for them, the idea is that they're going to push the product of that company on their channel. And they can do it in multiple different ways. They can, they can get a product sent to them for free. And I myself am totally guilty of that. Oh, and Rich is saying I have an advertisement interrupting me. Sweet. See, I'm even chilling. So there you go. But obviously, when you have a sponsorship, you have a company that sends you something. Sometimes the idea is you get it for free, you review it, and then you keep it. And then sometimes you get it and then have to send it back. It could be a demo firearm. It could be, an optic. It could be a number of things. But sometimes you have to send it back. In most cases, you don't. And that's kind of the coolest thing in regards to getting a sponsorship, is that you'll get some of the nicest things sent to you and you never have to pay a dime for it. And I would suspect that most larger channels have sponsorships. I mean, you could see it in their advertisements that they do, even in their videos where they're talking about like Cabela's or Palmetto State or one of these companies that have sent them things. And, that's sort of the thing where you have to ask yourself, if a YouTuber is getting something sent to them, and the sponsorship or the sponsor is a very powerful company and very influential, the question has to be asked is that kind of then corrupting that reviewer to say what they don't want to say but have to say in order to get more products from that sponsor? And, at times I think there is going to be that. I mean, I don't really see many YouTubers who do gun reviews as gun reviewers anymore. I see them as basically, certain talking points, and that's it. There's really no review. And we'll talk a little bit more about how you can tell that, and why I think that's really becoming the more pervasive part of YouTube, especially in the gun community and really in any product review. For me personally, and I'll discuss what I've done. That way, I can be hopefully as above board as possible. I mean, I've gotten no sponsorships. I have received money from one company, and I have absolutely made sponsored content for them. And I actually put it in as paid advertisement in the 2 videos I made for them. And that was Core Essentials. They sent me a couple of belts. They asked me if I would do like a little spot during the video, and then they would pay me for it. They didn't ask me how much I wanted. They offered a set amount. And I said, sure, why not? And the reason why I did that was I absolutely love Core Essential belts. I think they're fantastic. I use them still to this day. So for me, it was a no-brainer. I knew that it was a product that I use, and I knew it was a product that I stand by. So if they were willing to pay for a couple of spots on a video, so be it. Absolutely. And that's pretty much the extent. Now, have I received free products from other people? Yeah, absolutely, I have. I've received holsters, optics. I've received some guns. But the funniest part of that for me was that when I did the gun reviews, and that was for a company called Springfield Armory, I said a couple of negative things about a particular firearm, which was the XDS Mod 2. For example, the trigger wasn't that great, and I didn't like the grip safety. I thought the grip safety was a little not for my tastes. What's up, Rotodima? How are you, sir? And so when I said that in the video, that was the end of it. I never heard back from them. And they never extended any offers back out to me to do any more content for them. And that was kind of it. And, at the same time, I could have hid that. I could have not said anything. And probably to this day, you'd be seeing me making videos for Springfield Armory. And, I think sometimes when I look back at that experience, I would say to myself, you really have two choices, right? You can absolutely go down that road where you're just going to use talking points that they want you to, and you're only going to highlight good parts of the things that you have, and you're not necessarily going to negate the bad side. You're just never going to talk about them. You're just never going to bring them up. And I think for me personally, I never looked at this as a business. So for me, I said, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to say what I want, and whatever happens afterwards, it happens, and that's about it. Now, the other thing on how YouTubers make money is they use affiliate links. And you see these in every video, whether it's PSA or the Sonoran Desert Institute, TAC Pack. I mean, all of these companies are sending out links to these guys and gals. And what they do is they put the links either on their own personal website or in the video description. And basically how that works, and this is common knowledge, when you click on that link to buy a product, a percentage of that price goes to the person who sent you the link. And that's how affiliate links work. I've put out a few. I can get affiliate links, but I just, for me, I never really pushed it and I never really did it. And that's probably at a detriment to myself. But I just felt like, it wasn't really what I was into. Again, I've always tried to say to myself, I'd rather do this for fun rather than as a business. And I think that's at my own peril, so to speak. The other part that I think is probably, the weird part of this is the views and engagement part of it, right? So we have sponsorships, we have affiliate links, and then we have viewership and engagement. And that's the key, but that also plays a role with algorithms and then what you're using as hashtags and what your titles are. And, when you look at the viewership and engagement, I would say that most money from AdSense, which is where it comes from on YouTube, the money that you're going to get from that is going to be based on how much interactions you're having and how many people are viewing your channel and viewing the video. Over time, the subscriber number hasn't really mattered as much as the viewers and the interactions. So, a lot of people will post questions and try to get people to chime in. Obviously I'll give a couple of those questions tonight to see what you guys think. But I think also, when I think strikes me as really weird is that when you talk about some of these channels that are getting viewership and engagement and they're making money from their AdSense, a lot of times they're going to bring up the fact that they want to have, they want to try to make more money, right? Because they believe that if they make more money, then what's going to happen is they're going to be, kind of pushing away the influences of the big companies. And, again, is that true? I mean, maybe, right? But you'd have to pull in a lot of money. And sometimes the viewership and engagement isn't going to produce that, right? Especially in the time when, and I don't know if you guys remember, but there was that time where YouTube was really hitting gun channels hard. They were demonetizing people. They were taking away, viewership and hiding the channels and all this stuff that was going on for years. And now what you're finding is that it seems to have dullen a little bit. I wouldn't say it's necessarily the same. But I don't know. Rotodime is saying YouTube, no landing on the moon. No, you are correct. Is anyone telling the truth? No. We are in our own Truman Show. That's a good point. And, my thing is to say that even with that comment, I think it's spot on. Nobody's telling the truth. And I mean, are they telling the full truth versus half the truth? I would say most people are talking half the truths. And getting back to that idea of engagement and viewership, if you're not able to make that money to become completely independent from the sponsorships, from the affiliate links, from I dare to say the Leviathan Company, which I think we all know who they are. I think if you're not making in and pulling in that money from that, there's got to be other ways. Now keep in mind, you see everybody having Patreon. I've seen YouTubers putting in their Venmos and their PayPals, which I think is crazy because, you might as well stand on a street corner and hold out your hand, in my opinion, with that. Who knows? Maybe I'll do it myself. But, I've never really had that desire to do that sort of stuff. I mean, I've had Patreon, never did anything. I had something else. I forget what it was, but I told everybody just to stop donating. And I only made, I think, like $25, $30 on that. But I also think, you got to ask yourself, like, where does that cross the line, right? Because we want to have honest content, but at the same time, how do we get that honest content when it really boils down to how much money these folks want to make? And, if you don't believe me, what I'm saying, I mean, some of these folks are making, like crazy money. I mean, just crazy money for being YouTube influencers. Again, I won't even call them reviewers anymore. I just call them influencers. If you don't believe me, you can look on websites like Social Blade. You can look at, there's another one called youtube.er, where it kind of gives you an average of what they're making through AdSense. And some will say, well, that's not true. This isn't accurate. I mean, I can tell you that on my end, it is fairly accurate because I know when it pops up for me, it says I make like $80 a month, and I really don't. I make I'd say about $15 less than that every month, but I would say it's fairly accurate based on that assumption. But when you look at some of these other channels, what you begin to find is that they're making thousands of dollars a day, tens of thousands of dollars a week, hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not $1 million a year. And that's just through their AdSense. That's just their viewership. That's not including Patreon. That's not including membership. That's not including all of the kickbacks and affiliate links. And that's not including all the sponsorships that they're getting paid for. It also doesn't include the products they receive that, let's be honest, some of these folks are probably selling and making money off of that. So there is a huge amount of money to be made. But at the same time, where does it end in regards to being truthful, and where does it begin? I don't know if anybody could really pinpoint that. So one of the things I'd bring up also is, why do the creators of these, these videos or whatever it might be, why are they so apt to potentially lie to the viewer? And I'll be honest with you, I think it has a lot to do with pressure. I think it's financial pressure, obviously. I mean, when you have, 1 million plus subscribers and you're making $1,000 a day, it's hard to get away from that. And I think obviously we know that money has a tendency to change and shape things. Money is something that everybody wants. But I'll be honest with you, it's difficult for people to make in this, whatever you want to call this business or not. But I also think that there's also pressure from manufacturers, right? Again, I have felt that. I felt it from Springfield Armory. To an extent, I felt it from Walther. Walther actually sent me the CCPs. And as you know, I think I made 3 videos of those guns, and they were absolute shit. And I will say they were shit. And then this brings me up to the next point, that there's also pressure from the viewer. And the problem with the viewers is not that they don't agree. It's the fact that once you say something negative about a product that they have, that they paid for, they will absolutely crucify you. I've seen that personally on my own channel. I've spoken up on the Walther CCP. I think that gun is a piece of garbage. There are people who have chimed in for me or to my channel after I've made those videos, and they just absolutely barbecue me every single time. And I just think it's unfortunately, I have no more options with Walther after that. But at the same time, I wasn't going to lie to you and say it was a good gun. Let's see. Armsman is saying, I know a few YouTubers that make in over $20,000 a month. You're absolutely right. I know a few of them myself. Yeah, and it was a dumpster fire. All 3 of them. And a lot of people will complain and say that I'm not a Walther guy or whatever it is. I've owned every single Walther that has ever been created in 9mm. P99, PPQ, PDP, PDPF, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I had a, God, what was it called? The Creed. I had the, I didn't have the PPX. I didn't have that one. I had the PPS M2. So I've never not been a Walther fan, but that gun was just a flaming turd. And, you know, people will chime in and they'll complain, but that's part of that pressure, right? So you're getting pressure from the manufacturers. You're getting pressure from your accountant because you need to make money and you need to continue, you know, hitting those peaks. And, you know, as the Armsman said, if you're making, you know, $20,000 a month, and do the math, guys. I mean, 20 times 12, that's what it was, 240,000 a year? And all you're doing is shooting guns and reviewing products, that's not too fucking bad. And, you know, I think when you're making that kind of money and then you have to constantly put up with that pressure of making that money, it's going to change how you deliver your product or how you deliver your videos. CCP was, especially for women. Yeah. Okay. If you want a gun that doesn't shoot. Rodadima is saying, if reviewers say negative things about a gun that I own, I don't get mad. As long as the gun works for me, that's all that matters. And you're absolutely right. Like, you would think that would be the normal, but unfortunately at times, you know, you get a lot of abnormals who comment about how much you suck because you didn't agree that this particular firearm was not the best. Or they will chime in and say, well, that's your opinion, and your opinion doesn't mean anything because I heard it from, like, let's say Mr. Guns and Gear, and his opinion is more aligned with mine, so that means he's more valid. And that to me is like the brilliant stupidity of YouTube, right? So somebody who's popular says something different that's more aligned with somebody's viewpoint, and right away now they have more merit and they have more value because of it. It's the dumbest you know, argument that anybody can make. So, all right. So let me ask you this, and I have to read this to you guys. So, would you trust a product review more if the creator said, this is sponsored, but I'm being honest? And, you know, we can talk about many channels that do that, right? Saying, well, they sent it to the channel, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to give you an honest review. So my question is, do you believe that or do you not believe it? Rodime, I own a Kel-Tec S or a sub 2000, never failed, 2,000 plus rounds, right? And of course, I'm sure there's people who say that's a piece of garbage. You know, it's kind of funny. Dennis is saying, I bet Caracol is my biggest sponsor. You know, do you know I never made $1 from them? Not $1. I never got paid to do anything for them. They sent me the guns, and, you know, the first round of those guns was not very good. That's why they vanished for, I think, what, 6 years? And then he sent me the new ones, and they were fine. They worked perfectly. So, you know, and like I said, I've gotten lucky a few times. I've had a couple of companies send me some stuff, and they were just really good products. You know, I've been lucky in that regard, but it's been far and few between, and that's okay too, right? You know, I just think for me, I've never, like I said, never looked at it as business, so my mindset wasn't in the business mode, whereas a lot of these people are. And like I said, I'm not bashing anyone who's done this. I think if they're successful at it, great. I just wish there was a little bit more honesty behind what they're doing, what they're presenting, and how they're getting the stuff delivered to them. But they'll, you know, the contracts they sign, I'm sure, are NDAs at sometimes. I'm sure some of those contracts read where they have to produce a video and then they have to send the video first before they can publish it, because I've had that experience. You know, there's an infamous company that starts with an O and ends with a light, where they would want you to send the video to them so they could review it before you pushed it. That's why you've never seen any Olight shit on my channel. And, you know, even if they told me to do it, I still wouldn't do it. And if I didn't sign anything, then it's not a legal binding contract. Arms is saying the PPS M2 was good. Walther should have incorporated CCP grip on the PPS. I agree. That CPS was Humorex and felt like an airsoft. I think the problem with that CCP was that it was based off the P22. And that's where it should have lied. And the one thing that a lot of people don't talk about is that when you looked at the CCP, they offered a 9mm and a 380. The folks who bought the 380 never seemed to have a lot of problems with it. People who had the 9mm seemed to have all kinds of problems with it. And I still think it's because the gun wasn't designed around the idea of having a hot load in 9mm. I think it was designed for or around a 22 and a 380. Even though a 380 is comparable to a 9mm, I know, but I just don't believe that gun was well engineered. And yes, the PPS M2 is still good. I know Rabbi has that as well. There is some video lag. Yeah, I mean, it's bound to happen. You know, it's as good as my computer. I'm gonna sneeze really quick, so I have to see how to mute this thing. All right, I didn't figure out how to mute it fast enough, so my apologies. All right, Looney Tune, what up? How are you? Armsman is saying, honest to an extent, these days I don't acquire anything from reviews. I use the relationship I have with my local gun shop, unfortunately, and am able to try before I buy. Yes, you're lucky. I don't necessarily have that opportunity, but, you know, if I did, it'd be great. So, you know, like I said, the one question I had was, you know, would you believe someone or trust that it's an actual good review if they say they were sponsored or the thing was sent to them and they still produce an actual, you know, video? Thank you, Dennis. I appreciate that. So now the question is, how do you spot dishonest reviews? I'm sure some of you can say, all you got to do is look at Such. So, all right. So I name dropped him because I just, you know, I'm sure that he's a really nice guy, but I mean, if we're going to talk about anybody in the universe of YouTube who pushes out commercials, it's him. There's nothing about his videos that I find to be remotely interesting, or at least informational. I mean, I watch his videos sometimes because I want to see up close and personal the product, but I don't really associate with his opinions because his opinions are never anything but good. And you know, I don't believe that, right? I don't think there's anything perfect. So it's hard to, you know, it's hard to trust someone who never seems to have any type of independent thought, any type of independent feelings or independent opinion. And that's why I kind of tune out from a lot of people because it just makes no sense. Let me see. I'm looking at my notes. So again, I apologize, you know, that I'm doing that. So the first thing we would talk about when we're talking about how do you spot fakes, right? Or people who are, you know, sort of, you know, sponsored and bought. So interestingly enough, I was looking at the Walther PDP-F in the 3.5 inch slide and barrel. And I wanted to look at them online. I wanted to see some videos on them. I'm not thinking about buying any, but I think it looks cool. I'd like to put my hands on it just because, you know, I do like the way like a 19X fits or something like that. But when I was pulling up the videos for the PDP-F, the 3.5 inch, interestingly enough, every video that you saw on YouTube from the big channels and even some moderately sized channels, they all use the same exact title. And then when you watch the video, it's all the same exact talking points. Oh, this is a grip for small hands. Initially, they said it was the F for female, but then now it's for small hands. And every single video said the same exact shit. And so you have to be like, how do I trust what they're saying if this is what's being scripted to them? Let's see. Dennis, in this shithole state, nobody has to try before you buy. You're right. Absolutely. If the video has big production, that's a red flag. I agree with that too. And we can name a bunch of guys where they overproduce. And you know, I mean, it's good to watch. Like I do like some of the cinematic qualities that some of these folks are putting out, but it's hard to take anything they're saying with any informational value because of the fact that, you know, the production part of it probably costs so much that they have to sell that product before that video is over. Let's see. What about those channels that state they don't review anything they don't like, so everything is positive? You know, that's interesting too. You know, I think when you look at a reviewer and everything they say is positive, to me, that's one of the biggest red flags, right? I love handguns. I'm not going to lie. I have a lot of handguns. I've had a lot of handguns. I've shot a lot of handguns. And is there a perfect one? Not really. I think every handgun has maybe a minor flaw or something that doesn't sit right with you. And I think as a reviewer, you're kind of obligated to talk about that. You're kind of obligated to say, hey, this works, but it works for me. Here's if I can speak English, here's why it may not work for you. If you have this or you like that, but you don't even hear a lot of that. You just hear positive, 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 positive. And you know, maybe it's not good in this one spot, but it's positive, and you need to go out and buy it. You see that a lot these days. Any gun. I'll give you a great example. The new Shield. The first new Shield, I forget what it's called, the Shield X, I think it is. And when that came out, it was like, oh my God, the Shield X is so much better than the original Shield, even though they just came out with the comp carry not too long ago, which everybody said, oh my God, it's a great gun, you got to buy it, which I had and I loved it. But then the Shield X came out, and then all of a sudden, no, the Shield X is best. It's the best ever. But now it's the Shield X ported, and that's best and the best ever. So it's like when you watch the videos, it's always the same bullshit. It could be a Glock Gen 5 compared to another Glock Gen 5. They're exactly the same, but the next one they review is better than the first one they reviewed. It makes no sense to me. And I think if you're just pushing positive, kind of red flag it, kind of think about, well, not everything's perfect. And we know this because nothing in the world is perfect. So how could this one product be perfect? Let's see. I talked about the idea of everything being perfect, the fact that there's really no talk of downsides or any alternatives to the gun. I mean, I've tried to do comparison videos where I say to you, sorry, Dennis, that there's ads. I think that, when I did that video that Dennis is talking about in regards to Shadow Systems, I had 3 competitive guns. I had the Shadow Systems, the Bull Armory, and I think the other one was the, what the hell is the name of that gun? I sold it because it just wasn't for me. I forget what it was. It's like a Glock clone, but it's got metal frame or metal internals. God, what was the name of that gun? Oh, you guys chime in if you remember it, because I don't. And, at the end of the day, I said the Bull Armory, in my opinion, was better than probably the 3. And the the MR920 was as good, if not slightly better, based on the ergonomics. I mean, they're all good guns. Everything you see is good. But at the same time, you want to talk about the positives and you want to talk about the negatives, because you're giving people a broader sense of what to expect. And to me, that's what's missing right now. To me, what's missing is the fact that there's no really objectivity. Everything is good. Everything is great. Hey, guess what? I'm going to review this gun that's $3,000. 90% of you can't afford it, but I've got it for free, and I'm going to tell you to go and buy it. Like, that's the biggest line of crap I've ever heard. And yeah, it's cool to watch the video, and it's cool to get the experience of it, but to try to convince people to go buy that makes no sense to me, because the majority of people aren't going to. The other thing I would talk about is the fact that when you're watching these videos, there's this push, and it's usually on brands. And that's what also gets me. So and again, I'm not really talking about anybody in particular, but there are some YouTubers out there who will say how honest they are. And this is not Honest Outlaw. I'll put that disclaimer out there. But they'll talk about how honest they are. Their whole video, I'm so honest. I'm honest. And you know me in my channel, I'm honest. And you know me, I will only say what I know is true, and it's good and bad. Whenever you hear people saying that over and over and over again, maybe you have to question that, right? Because if you have to say it a million times in your video, more than likely, you're probably not. And the reason why I say that is because, there are certain products where a video person, a YouTuber, a tuber, was on there and he was talking about how honest he was. And I mean, it was like every 2.5 minutes. But then between those 2.5 minutes, there was, oh, but try this product. Try this product. Oh, by the way, these guns are amazing. And you could tell they were getting the guns. You knew they were getting the guns from these companies, and yet they try to portray themselves as this honest, upright, citizen, and they did not tell you that they got that product. And I know that has happened a few times on a particular channel. I know for a fact they get those products from this company, and that's where I began to say, you know what, the dishonesty behind all this, makes no sense. Again, I'm not bashing anybody for making money. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. What I'm just saying is, why can't we at least be above board about it and say, hey, look, guys, I'm going to let you know right now, I'm not going to say anything negative. I'm just going to point out the highlights, and I'm going to use my platform as an advertisement for everything that comes here. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. And some people might say, yeah, but then you're going to turn down some of your viewers. But if you don't think your viewers already know that, then shame on you, because more than likely they already know that. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with saying it. Miko is saying it's like getting dressed every day. That's right. So is EDC choices. Sometimes it's this or that. one and what you wear and has lots to do with it, if you get me. I think I do. I just think that when you look at the overall, I guess the environment of YouTube, it really has gone away from kind of getting good opinions and it's gotten away from that. It's now talking about advertising and influencing and trying to convince you to buy something, even though the person who's trying to convince you never bought it. And that's where I kind of got a bad taste in my mouth regarding all of this stuff. And that's why you're not going to really see much on this channel anymore. You're just not. And it's not making, I'm not telling you to, oh, poor you, and I'm on my own soapbox. I just think for me, I'm not comfortable with that. Would I like to be able to get products from companies and review them? Yeah, absolutely. But I'm not going to not do an honest review. And I've always said this, and I can tell you this for another fact, that if a company really wanted somebody like me to review their product, they would send it to me. And they may say, well, your viewership is too low or whatever it is. But to me, the only way you build viewership is if you produce content on products, right? So if I was to get a product and I make a video on it, I guarantee you it's going to do well because it's going to be the next hot thing. One of the things I would tell you is Bull Armory. Bull Armory was an interesting company, and Armsman is talking about them, so I'll talk about it myself. So Bull Armory never sent me anything for free, just so you know. I did pay for every Bull Armory you've seen on the channel. I got a discount on both of them, but I paid for them. And so I got a good discount on the first gun I ever did. And I forget what it was. I think it was the Axe. But it was like a bare bones, like there was no frills. This was like bargain basement Glock clone, right? And when I spoke to the rep at Bull Armory, the conversation we had was, look, we will send you more products if this video does well. So I said to this individual, a very nice guy, by the way, I said to this individual, I said, listen, I'm not going to lie to you. You're probably not going to send me shit because this video isn't going to do anything. And it wasn't because I thought my content sucked. It was just that the gun they sent to me was a gun that nobody cared about. It was a gun that was not going to get major play because at that point in time, people were moving away from, Glock clone striker fired guns. People were moving towards 2011s, double stack 1911s. And we all know Bull Armory has those. So when the video came out, it did horrible, which I knew. And then, of course, when I reached back out to them, they basically said thank you, but no thank you, because there wasn't enough engagement. So, that I would always say, it sucks for me, right? At the same time, I would say that's part of business, right? If you don't have the engagement, why would they send you anything? But I also think when you want engagement, you have to give products to people to make reviews that people want to see. And I'm sorry, a bare bones Glock clone is not that. It's just not. It doesn't matter who makes it. So let's see. Dennis is saying he'd love to get his hands on a new Bull Armory 2011. Let's see. Oh yeah, the other BS, Mr. Guns full-time advisor. Brother Dima, I've even called them. They can't keep up with demand, allegedly. Yeah. The Armsman, I would love to get the Axe FS Pro. Yeah, I mean, Bull Armory it's an interesting gun company. They make great guns. I don't think anybody should be shocked by this. I think it's kind of funny to see people coming out and saying, "Oh my God, Bull Armory is so great." Bull Armory has been around forever. I believe it's the second oldest company in Israel when it comes to firearms. So they've been around forever. And so to think that they don't make good quality stuff made no sense ever, because they've always made good quality stuff. And so that just goes to show how, people, when they make these reviews, they don't even know the history of the companies that they're reviewing for. So that's sort of why I just kind of laugh at that. Yeah, their price is good. I mean, but again, MSRP isn't good, but you can find them cheap. That's for sure. The 2011s you can't anymore. 1911s you can't anymore, because that's where a lot of the attention went to. Which I could tell you, before it hit the markets, I was even telling them in Israel, guys, this is where the market's going. And unfortunately, I never got to play with any of that stuff. Amico saying any kind of publicity is engagement. I agree with that, but unfortunately, when companies only have limited stocks, sometimes they have a limited amount of units they can send out to reviewers, and obviously they definitely have certain reviewers they send things out to keep. You see it all the time. One culprit I think we can all agree to is Springfield Armory. Whenever they have a release, they all send out their reviewers, certain special boxes and of all the goodies and the firearm that you can't get anywhere else. So you see that all the time. And there's so many channels that have that little special bond with Springfield Armory. And you can always tell because they never say bad. And you can. And I will tell you right now, like I said before, you cannot say anything bad about Springfield Armory if you ever want to get one of their guns again. You just can't. If you do, you're done. They blacklist you. I'm serious. So if you guys have questions, you can ask, feel free to. I appreciate everybody who's chatting in the comment section there. I think at the end of the day, like if I was to look at everything, I feel like I covered pretty much everything, so we can open up the chat afterwards to just having conversations about anything you'd like. But, I think what you have to do ultimately as a viewer and as somebody who's going to be watching YouTube videos to, try to make a decision, an informed decision, a good decision, I think you got to take everything with a grain of salt. I think one of the things you need to do is you need to look around. You need to look at a lot of different channels, read a lot of different articles, and sometimes even then that's skewed, right? I think if you have an opportunity to go to a local gun shop and kind of, dry fire a gun or at least handle the gun, that's also a big thing to do as well. And it can be intimidating, especially if you're a new gun buyer and, or maybe you're just not used to the experience as much. It can be intimidating to go into a gun shop and ask questions and not know a lot. But I would say to you, if you go to a gun channel on YouTube and they're offering information, and the information is kind of a schematic of what the gun is, the size, the use, the rounds, the ergonomics, the features it comes with, maybe some things that might negate your interest. I think if you find videos that do things like that, you're on the right track. However, I think if you look at videos and you see nothing but good, nothing but positive, you have these this B-roll of all of these amazing YouTubers shooting really fast with this hardcore music playing in the background. And maybe, they might be in a beautiful country area, or maybe they're in the desert rolling around in sand. Maybe take a step back and say, I don't really know. But at the same time, I think if you can get that information you're looking for, and it seems like it's done in a concise and honest way, then make your decisions based off of that. I don't think there's anything that can replace real world interaction with people. Go to a gun shop. If they tell you to only buy Glocks and Smith & Wessons, don't listen to them, and see what their options are. But I would definitely use as many resources as you can to go out there and buy a gun that works for you. And that's pretty much the last part of that I have to say. So Dennis is saying he'll give me his CR 920 XP. I'll do a review on that. I always tell you, hit me up in the email, man, and we'll hook up real quick because you're local. You're close to me. Let's see. Armsman, CR920 XP is excellent. Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about it. I am real. I am very real. I am not AI at all. Or am I? So, I think with guns right now, I think there's been a slowing down of sorts. I think, as a matter of fact, if you watch a lot of the channels, you're noticing there's not a lot of content being put out that's brand new. Obviously, we could talk about certain companies that I just think are stupid. First of all, SIG, 6 Hour is a stupid company on many different levels. If you want a cheap striker-fired gun, you can probably find a 320 anywhere for super cheap because nobody wants them anymore. But I also think, I just think their business tactics are stupid on many different levels, And if you haven't seen the Charlie Kirk thing and the organization that he worked for, you should check that out with SIG because they're donating, I think, what is it, a whopping $50 for every $1,500 gun they sell. It's pretty funny. It's 1776 or bust at Gmail. And so Now, like, what's a good company still? I mean, CZ's good. I don't know. A lot of people made the big deal about the ported P10C. Again, why? Why is that such an important gun? It's a P10C, and it's a good gun because it's P10C. But at the same time, there was just a massive explosion by my house. So, Mary, what was that? Wow, that was pretty freaky. And it's too damn cold to be a thunderstorm. Mare, what was that?
It's a storm.
Really? I'm still alive.
I was out there with the dogs and I came back in because it started.
Was it lightning?
That was thunder.
Ooh, shit.
Oh, how should
I know. All right. Okay. Get out of here. All right. So fortunately, it was not an explosion. So we're not in a nuclear war with the Chinese or the Russians. Apparently, there's a storm coming in the middle of November. That's weird. But yeah, that was an interesting boom. I don't know if the microphone caught it, but it was really loud. So that was kind of freaky. Let's see. Yeah, send me an email, man. We'll try to hook up. That'd be cool. And then the Armsman saying, hey, when we train in Florida, we really train. Cartwheels, backflips, running and jumping over vehicles, jumping off the second story while discharging tactical heat seekers. I believe that, just like everybody else does. That's why, when you watch the videos, they're saying, oh, listen, I've got this optic on it. It's a ported gun. It's got all the bells and whistles, and you can do tactical rolls in it. It's so stupid. Miko, where are you at right now? Or Makoki 23. Where are you at? Where's your location? So, that's about all I have to say about YouTubers and why I've become, I guess, a little bit detached from doing gun reviews. I mean, look, if I could get a company to send me stuff, it'd be great. I'd be doing reviews. But the only thing I can tell you is that I'm going to tell you positives and negatives. I'm going to tell you what works and what doesn't work, and what might be not for you as a gun owner. I think at the end of the day, like I said, you just got to make good choices. It's like anything else. Make good choices. Try to figure out who you can trust. Look at some of the smaller channels. Look at some of the moderately sized channels, and even look at some of the big channels. Some of those big channels are legit. They're putting out content that is self-funded, and they just grow and grow and grow. I think at the end of the day, you got to make a good choice. Yeah, now you're getting Thunder and Duchess, right? And yes, SIG always makes good hammer-fired guns. I agree with that as well. I think they make very good hammer-fired guns, 229, 226, M11s, 225A1, my favorite. 22, what was it? The 227s? 227s? Why do I feel like that's wrong? I can't remember. But yeah, all their hammers are great. All of them. Not so much liking the P320s, but I do like the Fuse. The Fuse is very good. Is that Otsego? Is it Otsego County, I think? Or Oswego? I don't know what that is. Otsego. I don't know what that is. 226 X Legion. That is a nice gun. Single action only. Really nice. Really nice gun. I agree. Totally agree. And you know what else too? Like, one of the things that I didn't realize was that when you look at the Social Blade money that some of these people are making, that's not including anything else. That's including just their AdSense revenue through viewership and ads. So when you're seeing that money that's coming in, that's not including their subscription number. Well, I think that's including the subscription number, but that's not including their Venmo, PayPals that some of these guys use. That's not including also the Patreon. So if they're making like 10 grand a month or $1,000 a day, let's just say they're doing that. Some of them are, that's just the ad revenue. That's not including everything else that folks are giving them. And that's why I say, for someone to say it's all about honesty, I don't know. Otsego, that's right. I remember. SP 2022. That was a cool gun too. I like that gun. A lot of people don't, give that gun any credit because of the fact that it's a polymer hammer fired gun. But I like the SP 2022 or 2022s. Those were nice guns. They were well built. Basically, it's a polymer 229. I mean, it's really a cool gun. Not so much on the mags because I didn't like the bottom of the mag base plate, but it's a really, really good company or good. That's a really good product. I like the 2022s. Those were really nice. And you know what gun I did like too, which kind of is interesting, the actual granddaddy of the 320, which is the 250. The P250 was a nice gun. It was a good, reliable firearm. A lot of people don't talk about it. They don't remember it. Some people will say that the trigger pull on that gun was long and it was, heavy. I didn't really see that. When I played around with P250s, I felt the trigger was very smooth. I thought it was a very nice double action trigger. I would say it was lighter than, let's say, a P2000, but the take up on it was very smooth, very smooth. So the P250 I thought was a very, very good gun. Yeah, I agree with you. The Armsmen, it's all about sending them money for support, even though they're getting everything for free. And on top of that, when you see the money that they're making on their AdSense revenue, it's ridiculous. But I will tell you, it is difficult to be a small channel. It's difficult to be a medium channel when you don't get that sponsorships or the money coming in, because you just can't compete. You just can't, and I can't, and that's why you don't see guns here anymore. I just couldn't do it anymore. P250 was basically the P250. Everything about the P250 is the 320. The 320 is based off the P250, so that's why there's always that cutout in the back. As a matter of fact, any 320 lower will fit on a P250 slide with the trigger control group. So that's why, if you want a P250, look for one, buy it, and then get whatever grip module you want for it, and then you make it a modern P250. I didn't know Galloway made a trigger for that. That's pretty cool. 226 and 9. The 226 ASE, aluminum stainless alloy, ASA, I think. Yep. That's my favorite of all time. The most beautiful SIG, that P226, aluminum stainless alloy, or aluminum stainless elite, ASE. That's what it was. Love that gun. Love it. I like that gun better than the 229. And a 225A1, single stack, beautiful gun. It's a Baby Legion, one of the best guns they ever made. One of the best guns they ever made. Hands down. That's cool. Yeah, 250s. And you know what's funny is the 250s are actually getting to be more expensive than 320s. So, but again, it's like, it's like anything else, right? Nostalgia. So, all right. So we're coming up to almost an hour, guys, and I do appreciate everybody sticking around. So we'll talk a little bit more. If you have any comments or suggestions, let me know. Like I said, I'm not really sure if there's ever going to be any more reviews of guns here. I'd like to pretend that maybe one day there will be. But, unfortunately, and I think what other people don't realize is that when you're doing these things and you're pulling it out of your own pocket, eventually life is going to catch up to you. I mean, there's just too many things. You've got to worry about bills. You got to worry about mortgage. I've got 2 kids who are going to school, so I got to worry about that. And you begin to really question whether or not it's worth it. And I never really saw a lot of financial reward. I mean, I think at one point, the maximum I was making a month, and it only lasted, I think, 2 months, maybe 3, was $800. That was in my good days. And that was great. Like I was, holy shit, I'm almost hitting $1,000, but it was short-lived for sure. Yeah. 1911s, high power CZs and Berettas, again, CZ, they're kind of, I don't know. Best gun of all time, P01, right? That's my opinion. It's always been my opinion. You could say CZ Shadow 2 carry. For $1,500, why would I pay that when I can pay for P01 $700? for a nice one. You know, you can get them cheaper used, but you know, I just think that you know, I think it's ridiculous. But I just don't see CZ really like pushing much of anything cool out there. I mean, the P10C ported, isn't that cool? It's just not. You know, oh, it's got a bull barrel, it's got a chunk port, great. Okay, great. You know, is it such leaps and bounds above the P10C? Nah, I don't think so. I don't think so. Dennis, have a great night, man. Appreciate it. Armstrong, I still have several P250s. They look identical to my P320s. They're the exact gun. It's the exact gun. Like I said, swap out the lower. You'll see. Fits like a glove. And that's the cool part of it. All right, everybody. So we are about an hour in. I am going to be shutting this down here in a minute. Again, I appreciate everybody who stuck around. Hopefully I didn't go too much off of topic and kind of just sound like a, you know, a monologue, but you know, this is where it's at. And I'm not unwilling to have those conversations. This was never a topic that I was afraid to not talk about. I can tell you back in the day, we did a live chat many, many years ago, and I brought it up then when everybody was getting hit hard by YouTube being demonetized and everything. And, you know, I kind of got annoyed because I was saying at that time, you know, if all you care about is making money, then maybe you're doing these videos for the wrong reason. You know, I thought it happened to, excuse me. I thought we did this stuff to educate and to, you know, make the 2A community stand out. And the funniest part is when I said that, I got a lot of flack for that, man. I got a lot of heat from people in the gun world at that time, you know, and, you know, some people said some stuff on live streams and that kind of crap. And they talked shit about my channel. And I'll never forget that because it was such an eye-opening experience. Like it was very petty, super petty. And, you know, there's one person in particular I'm referring to. And I would say, you know, piece of shit. That's what I would say. Arms and it shoots much better than a standard P10C. And I agree. That might be true. And I'm not saying it's not, but the P10C shoots great. It shoots great. It shoots flat, super comfortable to shoot, good trigger, nice ergonomics. For, you know, you can get a P10C ported, maybe $450, probably around closer to $450, $500. But you can find P10Cs for $250, $300. And it's just as good in my opinion, for whatever that's worth. P10F with Apex, Galloway, Cajun Gun Works. It's a beast. That sounds pretty cool. That sounds really cool. I may have a surprise for you guys coming soon. P10C time. Can't wait. All right, everybody. So I hope everyone has a great night. I hope that if we don't talk again before Thanksgiving, you all have a great Thanksgiving with your families. I think this time of the year for everybody becomes a special time. I like Thanksgiving better than Christmas, but I also think it's time for us to kind of take stock back into our families, spend some good time with them because unfortunately, you know, life is fleeting and, you know, it catches up to all of us. So I hope you have a great night. Stay safe. And as everybody knows, you know, freedom is never free. Thanks, guys.